Before we get started, if you'd like to follow along in FastBridge, pause this video and follow the instructions on this slide. The Group Growth Report is a tool designed to help educators set and track end-of-year goals for their students. It supports ongoing monitoring of student progress, ensuring that we can see how they are moving toward achieving these objectives. By comparing growth predictions with end-of-year goals and benchmarks, we gain a clearer picture of where students are in their learning journey. Additionally, analyzing growth percentiles and improvement rates helps us evaluate how different groups are progressing, providing insights to inform instruction and support strategies. Growth percentiles in the Group Growth Report compare student growth to a national sample, providing context for progress and categorizing growth as flat, modest, typical, or aggressive. FastBridge calculates these percentiles by comparing student growth rates against one of two norms: user norms or demographically matched norms. Demographically matched norms come from schools screening 90% or more of students and use sampling to match U.S. demographics, including gender, race or ethnicity, and free or reduced lunch rates. User norms are derived from all schools using the assessment by a cutoff date, requiring 90% of students per grade to be screened. Demographically matched norms better capture student population diversity, offering more accurate data for both lower and higher performing students across the ability continuum. This table displays available norms by grade and the year the national samples were updated. Before getting into the report, it is important to understand this filter called growth percentiles. This filter allows you to select from 4 options and compares median growth rates across different groups to provide more meaningful context based on how you want to analyze and use the data. The default is growth by all, which compares the median growth rate of students to all students nationally in the same grade regardless of START score. For example, let's say you are looking at a 3rd grade class and have it set to growth by all. Then say that you are looking at a student named Patty who had a high-risk START score of 394. When comparing Patty to other students, this filter would make it so that she is being compared to the 3rd grade national sample regardless of START score, meaning that Patty would be compared to 3rd graders who had START scores in advanced, low risk, and some risk. Similarly, if you select growth by district or growth by school, Patty's data would compare her to all 3rd graders within the district or school regardless of their initial START score. Growth by START score stands out as a valuable metric. This one will compare Patty to the nationwide sample of 3rd graders who started with the same score of 394, comparing apples to apples. By comparing students' growth rates with peers who began at the same starting score nationally, we can gain a clearer picture of true progress. This approach minimizes the impact of varied starting points, offering a more accurate and fair assessment of individual and group growth. It allows us to better understand growth patterns and identify areas for improvement with greater precision. With that context, let's dive into the Group Growth Report. If you're following along with me, you'll notice more colorful bars instead of pink and purple due to my selected filters. First, based on the previous slide, I went to the Growth Percentiles filter and chose growth by START score. Next, I used the color coding filter to select benchmarks, as we monitor progress based on benchmarks rather than norms. The final filter, end-of-year goal, lets you set the desired end-of-year score or risk level for students. By default, it targets the next highest level, meaning each student's goal score moves them to the next risk tier. For instance, since Patty was at high risk or dark pink in winter, her end-of-year goal is set to 483, the minimum for some risk. You can adjust this to low risk or advanced, though aiming for advanced may not be realistic for students starting at high risk. Finally, click on this plus icon to the right. After clicking on the plus sign, you'll see these columns appear. Let's look at Patty. In the fall, we can see that she scored 394 and high risk. In the winter, she scored 425 and remained at high risk. When FAST calculated her monthly observed growth score by taking into consideration the exact date she took each assessment, it found that her growth score per month equaled 8.7 points, which put her in the 79th percentile of growth when compared to other third grade students with similar start score. If she continues at this rate, then her end of year predicted score will be 449, which will place her at high risk. This information lets us know that although she did make some progress, she will end up further behind by the end of the year unless we consider what instructional support she may need moving forward. Moving on to Patty's monthly goal. What is this 20.91? This is how much her score would have to improve per month if by the end of year we wanted her to reach the end of year goal score of 483. Why 483? Because that is the minimum score required in the spring for Patty to make it into the next highest risk level, which is some risk. In this last column, we see the benchmark score, and you'll notice that it is the same for all students. That is because this is set to the minimum score needed to achieve low risk. Now that we've seen how this report works at the individual student level, let's look at the bar charts, starting with the one on the left. This one is pretty straightforward. It tells you the percent of students at each risk level during each administration period. If you hover over the bar, it will tell you the number of students. Finally, this chart shows the growth of all students, using the growth by start score filter we set earlier. This means each student's growth is compared to a nationwide sample of students at the same grade level with a similar starting score. Note that the colors in this chart correspond to the student growth percentile legend below. There are 4 growth categories: flat, modest, typical, and aggressive. Flat growth indicates the student is at or below the 15th percentile compared to grade level peers with a similar start score. Modest growth falls between the 15th and 40th percentiles. Typical growth is between the 40th and 75th percentiles, and aggressive growth is at the 75th percentile and above. Let's take a closer look at Patty. In this chart, her growth percentile is 79%, which places her in the aggressive growth category. Her box is colored light purple, indicating that, compared to other third graders nationwide with similar starting scores, she performed very well from fall to winter. Nevertheless, we can't forget that if she continues at this rate, she will still end up at high risk. To close, we've explored how the group growth report can help us set, monitor, and analyze student growth, offering a detailed perspective on where students stand and how we can support their journey. We examined how growth percentiles, benchmarks, and targeted goals offer a clearer, more equitable view of progress by focusing on where each student begins and their potential for growth. As we move forward, I encourage you to reflect on how these tools can inform your practice. Identify opportunities to better support students at all levels, and collaborate with colleagues to maximize the insights this data provides. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Eileen or Roman, or you can also request assistance from assessment services. This QR code will take you to the request form.